You're each getting a unique story, and no film has ever been made on this story before, ever. You're doing the first one, okay? And that's a neat thing. It's also an overwhelming thing, and it can be a challenging thing.
I'm Jessica Walsh, and my vet's name is Bud Laverne, and my first impression of him, he was really interesting.
This person is going to make up the bulk of your year. You're going to look at them every day. You are going to delve into their lives. You're going to meet them. Most of you will meet their family.
The process for watching, editing, and imagining how I wanted to document Bud's life was a hard process. Editing his interview into a story took some time and a lot of thinking. What to put first? How should I describe this aspect of his life? How should the documentation end? Were major questions I had to answer early on. The biggest part of the process was perfecting the editing and putting the final touches and details to ensure that everything was perfect. This difficult, time-consuming project is totally worth all the stress and time because I know it will be so beneficial to Bud and his family. I got to learn so much about Bud that sometimes I didn't even know where to begin or how to tell a story. He's not just some person on a screen, he's actually someone that I've gotten to know and care about. Bud means to me something more precious than he could possibly imagine. He's part of my high school career and part of my memory that will last forever and will never ever be forgotten.
This is going to be a huge, unbelievably stressful undertaking for you. This is going to take up a tremendous amount of your time and energy and emotional sanity.
I chose Bud because I felt an instant connection and familiarity with Bud's aspect of being in the Navy. My papa and my father were both in the Navy, so I felt like I would like not only to honor Bud with his story, but my family as well. Bud Bremer grew up mainly in Belvidere, Illinois, where he went to high school.
High school was a little strange to me. I only got started in it before we had to move somewhere else, and I never went back to high school after the first year. Sorry I didn't make it any further, but...
He started working at Rockford Products, a manufacturer company of cold-form components.
And I was doing a job trimming caskets, casket hardware and stuff. And they took that property, that area away from a place in Belvidere.
During World War II, Rockford Products supplied screws and bolts for aircrafts, trucks, and other military equipment. They profited from the wartime production demand and became one of the leading aircraft bolt fabricators in the nation.
It was hard work, and it was something we had to do, I guess.
Then tragedy struck. On Sunday, December 7, 1941, Pearl Harbor was bombed by the Japanese. The surprise air attack on Pearl Harbor killed over 2,000 people and over 1,800 people were wounded. This horrific bombing was an act of war against the United States and one of the most devastating attacks ever on the U.S. home front. This attack angered the American people, and the U.S. declared war to get justice for the lives that were lost. The U.S. had stayed relatively neutral until this home front attack, but now it was the time to strike back.
Well, I was surprised that it was so much talked about, because I guess it was on everybody's mind. I shouldn't have been surprised, but we all knew it was coming, I think.
When Pearl Harbor was bombed and the United States joined World War II by declaring war on Japan, Bud was prepared to serve his country.
I knew it was coming, so I expected it, and I knew I had two brothers that already were in the service, and I knew I was going to be there soon, so it didn't surprise me any.
Bud was drafted into the war, where he made the decision not to follow in his brother's footsteps and go into the Navy.
When I went in for my physical in Chicago, they run us through a whole bunch of things, and they were talking about it and asking questions about it, and I said, well, I was told that I could possibly be in the Navy if I went down to see the right people in the office up there, called the Navy Preference List. So I got drafted right into the Navy.
Training for the war was a 6 to 8 week camp where Bud was stationed at Camp Claiborne. Camp Claiborne was located in Rapids Parish, Louisiana, where new recruits, like Bud, went through basic training.
Well, there was a lot of marching and everything on what they called a grinder. That was the lot that we all marched on. And we had senior officers that were already in the service, and they were training us, and it was quite an experience for someone who was only 17 years old. So I was only 17 at the time, but I turned 18 soon after that. Well, you had to learn to swim, and not learn to swim, but you had to be able to swim. And it was, the water was salty, and even in boot camp it was salty. They did it purposely, I guess, to adapt you to ocean life, I guess. And I didn't like it. I didn't like swimming in salty water.
Why is it that as a young person, as a teenager, you're willing to make such a huge sacrifice of your time?
I wanted to thank you, Bud, for personally making my last year of high school really, really, really meaningful. Without you, I wouldn't even be in Vet Doc, and I really appreciate you sharing your story with me and letting me share it with the world. You've done a lot for your country, and you've done a lot for me, so by making this documentary, I hope I get to share your story with everybody you know and the whole entire world if possible, because you are really important, and you're really important to me. Thank you for letting me get to know you, and that's a really courageous thing to do, to open yourself up to something so different. It makes you feel really vulnerable, and I really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy this documentary.